So guys, it's finally happened. Bakugo has been kidnapped. As a manga reader, I've kind of been waiting for this because it is the introduction to what may be the best parts of My Hero Academia, at least in my opinion, because we're very soon about to be introduced to one of the greatest fights and one of the greatest moments in this story, at least as far as the majority of the fan base is concerned. I'm not really gonna go into that, of course, because I really don't want to spoil people who only watch the anime, but one thing that I really need to address when it comes to Bakugo's capture is that people seem to think that he's gonna become a villain simply because he was taken in by villains and they're gonna try and somehow convert him into becoming a villain. But one thing that a lot of people seem to forget is that Bakugo isn't exactly the type. You don't need to watch further into the anime to understand that Bakugo is not going to become a villain. I mean, if you have paid attention to Bakugo's character, it should be blatantly obvious that he is never going to turn villain, because, I mean, just look at him. Yes, he may be a bit toxic as far as his personality goes, but look at who his idol is. Who does Bakugo idolize? He idolizes All Might, and All Might is as far away from a villain as you'll get. He's the very epitome of heroism. So I would question what kind of reasoning people have of him becoming a villain, even if you're an anime only. Like, this is one of those times when being an anime only just isn't a valid excuse. Bakugo as well as Deku have both been idolizing All Might since they were children, and I don't see just why would Bakugo be any different from Deku in that regard. Why would Bakugo turn villain and Deku wouldn't? They both want to become heroes. They both want to become like All Might. The only difference is that one was gifted with All Might's quirk and the other wasn't, but that's beside the point. This doesn't have anything to do with quirks. It has to do with their goals as well as their role models, and as we just discussed, the role model of both Deku and Bakugo is All Might, the very symbol of peace, you know, the best of the best, the hero among heroes. So don't jump the gun and say Bakugo is gonna become a villain just because of what happened in this episode. I'm not really gonna go into, you know, what's gonna happen in the story. I'm not an asshole. I'm not gonna spoil you in that regard. I'm just saying, don't jump to conclusions. Alright, with that out of the way, let's talk about exactly what went down in this episode apart from the whole Bakugo thing, because there were a few things building up to the Bakugo thing that was really interesting. Like, we had this moment between Todoroki and Dabi. Now, this is something that actually is really interesting simply because of the fact that in the manga community, this particular moment in the story is what gave birth to an interesting theory, which was that Todoroki, Shoto, as well as Dabi are brothers. Now, obviously, it's still just a theory. There's nothing to confirm this, and obviously the reason behind this was how he singled out Todoroki's name in the way that he looked at Todoroki and he named him. And he gave him this really particular look on his face, you know. He had this very particular expression when he looked at Todoroki. So a lot of people have been speculating that they are in fact related, and with the anime coming back, you know, this theory kind of became even stronger because we got to see that Dabi's eye color was exactly the same as Todoroki's, as well as his fire was blue, kind of like how Endeavor was able to use blue flames. So with season 3 of the anime, you know, a lot of things when it came to this theory really just became even stronger. However, at the end of the day, it's still just a theory, and people shouldn't jump to that conclusion either that they are brothers, although I won't blame you if you want to keep to that belief. I mean, I personally don't mind if they are, but at the same time, you know, until there's actual evidence backing it, I ain't doing shit. One of the most interesting parts to me in this episode, and obviously this also happened in the manga, was when Bakugo was being captured and he said to Deku, he said, "Don't come." He's asking Deku to stay away, and I believe this is one of the key factors why a lot of people originally thought that Bakugo was gonna become a villain, simply because he asked Deku not to come along. He asked Deku to stay away from the villains, and a lot of people misinterpret this as in Bakugo wanting to be captured, but that is not the case. What he is saying is that he doesn't want Deku to get in danger. He wants Deku to be safe. He doesn't want Deku to put himself in danger to save Bakugo, especially after what Bakugo did to Deku. You know, Bakugo has been treating Deku so badly over the years. He probably doesn't want to have that on his consciousness, especially when you consider the fact that the League of Villains, they don't play around. They are willing to kill you even if you're a teenager, because just look at Shigaraki's kill list, Deku was at the top of it, which means he has absolutely no problems with letting a teenager die. And although Bakugo may not have realized this when he said don't come Deku, that doesn't change the fact that he understands the danger that is involved with having to go and rescue Bakugo, right? There's a massive risk that you're gonna end up losing your life if you do something like this, especially seeing as they're only students, they're not pro heroes. You know, if they were to launch some kind of a rescue operation, you're looking at a case where a lot of inexperienced teenagers would have to go up against villains that are a lot more experienced, most likely at least, and they are a lot more likely to kill you than you are to kill them. Regardless, I think it's kind of obvious that something's gonna go down in terms of Bakugo being captured. I mean, they're not just gonna leave him. I think that's blatantly obvious. You don't need to be a manga reader to understand that. But how it's gonna happen, you're just gonna have to wait and see, really. That's really all I can say when it comes to that. Now, one thing that obviously became a huge thing after Bakugo was captured was that the Hero Society, or more specifically the UA Academy, took a major hit because, as we saw in this episode, you know, the public went in on UA after Bakugo was confirmed missing, which kind of makes sense because UA is the biggest school in Japan when it comes to training heroes, and suddenly they're on a school trip, one of the students goes missing when there were pro heroes at the scene. People are gonna question it, and I understand that perfectly. I think I would too in a situation like that. I would question the security and the safety of the students that are enrolling in that school. And we had this other person, I think he was talking on TV, and he mentioned that he probably wouldn't want his child to enroll at UA simply because of what happened now, and maybe it's gonna get even worse from this point on, right? So UA is taking some big hits at the moment with Bakugo being missing and the recent attacks like the USJ incident and stuff like that. You know, UA is definitely not looking bright as far as their future is concerned. They need to do something real fast and real good in order to regain that trust from the general society. Also, we finally got more on the traitor thing. We don't really know anything about who the traitor is, of course. Not even in the manga, I can tell you that much, although there are plenty of theories out there. But as far as confirmed information is concerned, the traitor is very much still in the dark, and in the anime we finally got, I guess, a more concrete statement that yes, there's gonna be a traitor involved in the story. We don't know who it is, but we do know it has to be someone who knew of the location of the school trip arc. It has to be either a student from class 1A, class 1B, or some of the teachers that knew about the location, like Aizawa, Vlad, and then obviously the upper staff members of UA. I mean, those are really the only people who knew where the trip was gonna take place, as well as the Pussycats, of course, but I seriously don't think it's the Pussycats, like, let's be honest. But I'm not really gonna go into the whole traitor thing simply because of how little we actually know about it. But yeah, I mean, things are definitely getting more intense by the moment, you know, and with each episode and each arc, you know, things are getting nastier and nastier, I guess you could say. Now, what I found to be really interesting at the end of the episode, I think it was when Ida opposed the idea of going to rescue Bakugo. He wants to leave it to the pro heroes. This is something that's really interesting because it kind of goes back to when Ida went in on Stain, because as we remember, well, we should remember at least, Ida went in on Stain because of vengeance on his brother. But after that incident, he also realized that, you know, some of these people are really dangerous, and one misstep could lead to your death if you're unfortunate enough. And in this case, you were not talking one villain, you're talking a whole league of them. You're talking the entire Vanguard squad. Well, what remains of it at least, as well as obviously Kurogiri and Shigaraki. So Ida is probably the more rational out of the bunch, I'd say. I mean, honestly, if I had to choose, I'd probably leave it to the pro heroes as well. But Todoroki and Kirishima, they don't really just want to sit by and wait and hope for the best. They want to do something about it. They want to really make a difference. And even Deku in this episode, we saw how he was starting to tear up simply because of the fact that he was within reach of Bakugo and he still couldn't save him, which was kind of a throwback to when Aizawa said at the very beginning of the story that, you know, if he's gonna break bones after one villain attack, he's gonna be very useless as far as rescuing other people is concerned, which is kind of what happened in this episode because he had fought fought, muscular, and his body was absolutely torn. You know, all of his bones were basically broken. He couldn't really move as well as some of the other people. If his body had been fine, he may have been able to do something about it, but because he couldn't, Bakugo slipped right through his fingers. And that kind of helps Deku in a way, because that means that he will have to try harder in order not to break his body after just one villain attack. He's gonna have to try and find a way to fight in order not to break his bones. Of course, that's gonna take training, and it's gonna take time, you know, it's gonna take a lot in order for Deku to realize how to fight properly without having to endure such injuries where he cannot save his best friend from a villain attack. For instance, of course, it doesn't have to be Bakugo, it could be anyone, you know. In the future, we're gonna have to see maybe Deku come into a similar situation, and hopefully at that moment he will have learned enough to be able to do what he couldn't do the first time. He'll be able to rescue whoever is in need of rescue instead of letting them slip through his fingers like he did with Bakugo. Personally, I don't really blame Deku, and I don't think anyone should, because at the end of the day, you know, we're talking a group of villains versus students. So obviously he's beating himself up a little bit too much, but at the end of the day, who could blame him? It's his best friend we're talking about here. Anyway, I'm gonna end the video here, so let me know what you think down below in the comments about what you think about the episode. Like, did you like it? Do you think he's gonna become a villain? If you do, please stop. But anyway, if you did, be sure to Detroit smash that like button if you enjoyed, and subscribe if you haven't already. This has been Chaotic Plus, and remember everyone, Toga is waifu, Toga is laifu.